Hi guys, welcome back to our topics. Now today I'm not going to be doing a topic Q&A. I'm actually just going to demonstrate you guys how, the basic chopping skills is what I call them. Now I recently did a topic on knives and so many people had questions like on actual chopping techniques and advice and tips or anything like that. So I figured I would just make a video on my chopping basics that I use on an everyday basis that I think are I think everybody should know. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope you find it helpful. Remember to always leave suggestions for new topics down below. That's where I got all my suggestions from. So yeah, that's about it. So since this is a question, or I should say a topic, on something kitchen related, off to the kitchen. So the veggies I decided to use for today, or just everyday veggies that I use just about every single day when I'm cooking in one way or another. So I've got some fresh parsley here to demonstrate how to finely chop herbs. I've got some celery, carrots, potatoes, tomatoes. I've got some onions, garlic, and I also have a nectarine just to demonstrate how I personally like to cut a nectarine, and this goes for peaches and plums, any stone fruit really. So let's go right into it. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to chop. Okay, so what does chopping mean? Chopping is really chopping something up. Doesn't necessarily, the pieces don't have to be uniform, they don't have to be identical, they don't have to be super small. You just want them to be small enough. So the first thing you do is you cut your onion, in this case, in half, okay? Now I've left the root intact because the root is actually going to keep the onion together, the half of the onion. So you want to remove the first layer. And this is holding it together. You don't want to remove that until you're done cutting. Now, you want to make sure you hold your knife very firm, your fingertips back. Never like this because you can cut yourself. Hold your fingertips back, okay? So what I do, this is a regular chop. I go down this way, almost all the way through, stopping about right here. So I do it twice. And then I do 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? So you do twice this way and then 4 times this way. Make sense? Then you just cut like so. And this is a regular chop. And then I take this little, I take this little nub here and I just cut it right off. This I can discard and this I can go right in and chop. So this is a regular chop. The pieces aren't totally uniform. Some pieces are slightly bigger than others, perfect for if you're doing stew or a soup or a sauce that's going to cook for a long time and you want things to kind of, the onion in the end is going to cook down so much, it's going to be super soft and you're not going to have to worry about it. So that is how you chop. Basic chopping, right? And you can use this method to chop anything else. So now dicing. Dicing just means it's a smaller chop and the pieces are a bit more uniform. So again, leave the root bottom intact. Cut off the top, take the first layer off. Now you want to be a bit more careful with this because you're going to make more cuts, like you're going to slice it this way and this way more times. So you're going to do it 3 times this way, and then you're going to go across like that. See how small they are? And then you hold your fingertips back and you got a much smaller, pretty similar in size diced pieces. Make sense? Okay, so we've got the basic chopped and diced onion out of the way. I'm going to clean up, get a Kleenex because my eyes are starting to water, and then I'll show you the next one. Now for half moons, then you want to take your whole onion and remove the first layer. I'm going to cut it in half. Cut that little part off, and then you literally just slice, and that is slicing in half moons because you see the shape resembles a half moon. All right, so I think we've got onions covered. Now don't worry because these onions, they're not going anywhere. I'm going to chop these babies up and I'm going to put them in a soup. That's the great thing about chopping in uniform pieces because it's going to go into a soup and it's fine. Now let's talk about a potato. Now, you've got your potato. You want to cut it in half. If you're just chopping it, okay, you cut it in half, cut it across 4 times, boom, you've got a chop, okay? Pretty big pieces, fine. If you want to dice, so you've got your half a potato, you cut that in half once again. Then you cut it across And there you go. And there you have your little potato dice. So that's the potato. Let's move on to, let's move on to julienne pieces. Now, I don't julienne very often. I'm not very chefy, so I think julienne is a cut that's a little fancy that I don't typically use every single day, but I'm going to demonstrate how to use it, how to do it, because it is very easy. You've got your carrot, okay? I've peeled it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it on a bias or an angle, pretty thinly, and you want to keep them all together next to each other like so. You don't want them to go all over the place. So here you go. So then you want to lay them down like this. I'll get to those in a second. And there you cut across. And with this hand, holding firmly the pieces of carrots, oops, holding them firmly down. And before you know it, you'll be at the end. And now if one piece is a little bigger than another, you go back and you cut it, but typically you would do it much smaller than I did. But you've got that done and out of the way. Now, the best way to dice a carrot, in my opinion, is I always cut it in half. Now, if you want to chop it, just cut it in half and go across a few times, and you've got some chopped pieces. If you want to dice it, I cut it down and then cut it like so and go across. And you've got little tiny pieces. So that's done. Now, going back to a bias or a diagonal cut. I get this question asked a lot for celery or actually green onions, and this works for both things. You've got your piece of celery or green onion or whatever you want to cut into a bias, and you literally just put your knife on an angle, okay, and you just rock it back and forth. You rock it back and forth, and you're cutting it on an angle, which is also the same thing for a bias. There you go. You've got that. So next, a tomato. Now, there really isn't very many ways to cut a tomato. The basic, for me anyway, is either, you can slice it, of course, like that, right? Slices of tomatoes, or you can cut them into nice big wedges, which you take a tomato, cut it in half, and then cut it into wedges. And there you have beautiful wedges of tomatoes. If you want to cut it nice and small or chop it, you take your tomato, you cut it in slices, just like I did, and then I just run my knife across it horizontally, and here you go. Then you go across and you've got your chopped tomatoes. The one thing I will stress when you are chopping tomatoes, and this is going to play in this part, I never chop it this way because the skin is kind of slippery, and if you slip your knife, you can cut yourself. So I always cut it from the inside out. I think it's the safest way, and personally it's just what works for me, and safety first, always. Next, garlic. Garlic is usually chopped roughly or minced. Minced just means you want to really finely chop. So say I am doing a salad dressing, for example. I'm going to eat it raw. Well, chances are I'm going to want to cut it kind of finely because I don't want to bite onto a big piece of garlic. So you've got your garlic cloves. I just smash them with the back of my knife. Get them out, and then you pile them together. You go across. This is a basic chop, okay? To mince it, pile it together. Put the tip of your knife down, your hand firmly on top of the knife, and just rock it back and forth until it's finely chopped or minced. There you go. You can go a bit more, but for now, that makes sense, correct? Okay, now last savory thing, I'm going to show you how to chop up a bunch of parsley in this case. Now, something that I see a lot of people do that I have to be honest with you, drives me a little bit crazy, is you've got your parsley scattered across your cutting board, and then just, no, that's not how you cut parsley or any kind of herb. You always want to gather it all together, okay? Hold it firmly and just cut across. And then once you have it like this, you'll go back in, cut some more, and then you can cut it as fine or as chunky as you like, depending. Sometimes for salads, I like it nice and roughly chopped because I want to actually eat the herb as part of my salad. Sometimes I want it finely chopped, and in that case I just rock my knife back and forth until I feel like it's to my desired texture. So let's move on to the nectarine. Actually, first let me tidy up, wash my hands, and then I'll show you the nectarine. Before we get into cutting the actual nectarine, the piece of fruit, I just want to address that how extremely important it is to always make sure you have a chopping board, a plastic chopping board designated to only fruits. I have my basic wooden one that I cut up all my veggies on, then I have my little plastic one that I cut all my fruit on, and then I have a larger plastic one that I cut all my meat and poultry on. You want to make sure everything is clean, sanitary, because you don't want, as much as I've just wiped this and actually washed my board, if I were to cut my nectarine on it, it would taste like onions because it just doesn't go away. So, your nectarine. The knife I like to use for this is a small, sharp paring knife. This is just a knife I feel most comfortable because this is how I cut it. I take my peach or nectarine and I just, with a small knife, cut right down the center, right down the middle, and then you twist. This is not super ripe, so it'll work perfectly. And there it is. And then you can chop it, you can cut it in little pieces like, wedges like that, or you can remove the stone or the pith. There we go. And if you want to, you can cut it in half, like for a fruit salad. You could use a bigger knife for this. You absolutely could, but for cutting in half and doing wedges, I usually always use a small paring knife. And there you go. I mean, it's really simple and really easy. These are very basic techniques. So, if you're watching an episode of Laura in the Kitchen, today I'm making chili. And I said you want to make sure you have a chopped onion, celery, garlic, whatever. Now you've got a video to go back to and kind of see, okay, chopping means chop it up as best as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Dicing, oh, I want it to be smaller. Mincing, I want it to be really nice and small. So now you have a guide really to help you guide you along on everyday basic chopping techniques that I think everybody should know. And these are just my way of doing it, and there might be tons of different ways out there to do it. So if you have a special technique, please feel free to comment below and let me know. It might be very helpful to me and to others. Make sure you share. Sharing is caring. But that's about it. Other than that, I mean, I think we've covered it all. If I've missed anything, make sure you let me know. Always leave requests down below for new topics. Yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed spending time with me, and get chopping and dicing. I'm going to eat a piece of nectarine right now. Whoops, it almost slipped. Bye.